They weren't just dancing. They were breathing together, moving like water, like they'd been born knowing the rhythm of each other's heartbeat. The ballroom fell away. The crystal chandeliers, the silk-draped tables, the hundreds of watching eyes, all of it dissolved until there was only Stephanie in Larry's arms. And Larry holding Stephanie like she was the only truth he'd ever known. Her black dress caught the light with every turn, deep burgundy undertones shimmering against her rich brown skin. His hand pressed firm against the small of her back, protective, possessive in the most tender way. When he looked down at her, his blue eyes held that same wonder they'd carried for more years than most marriages survived. "You're staring again," she whispered, lips curved in a smile that had melted him since the beginning. "Can't help it," he murmured back, pulling her closer. "Still can't believe you're mine." Someone at a nearby table sighed. A woman dabbed her eyes with a napkin. This was what they did. Larry and Stephanie bore her. They made people believe in love again. They made cynics soften. They made the divorced and the bitter look at each other and wonder if maybe, just maybe, they'd given up too soon. The city knew them, not because of money, though Larry had built something considerable. Not because of status, though they moved in circles where power was currency. No, the city knew them because in a world that had tried to tell them they shouldn't work, they had become legendary. A black woman and a white man, married before the world was ready to celebrate them. They'd faced the whispers, the stares, the family members who'd turned their backs. They'd walked through fire holding hands, and somehow, impossibly, they'd come out the other side more in love than when they'd started. "Remember the first time we danced?" Larry asked, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Stephanie laughed, soft and warm. "You stepped on my feet 3 times. You wore those heels that could kill a man. You said they made my legs look like poetry." "They did. They do." He spun her gently, bringing her back against his chest. "Everything about you is poetry, Stephanie. Always has been." She rested her head against his shoulder for just a moment, breathing him in, that cologne he'd worn since forever, mixed with something that was just Larry, home, safety, love that had weathered every storm. Across the room, their son Peter stood with his girlfriend Avery, watching his parents with a mixture of pride and something close to awe. He'd grown up seeing this. The morning kisses before coffee, the notes his father left in his mother's lunch bag, the way they still held hands at the dinner table after all these years. "They're going to be like that forever," Avery said, leaning into Peter's side. Peter wrapped an arm around her shoulders, never taking his eyes off his parents. "Yeah, they are." He'd been raised on this love, built himself on the foundation of it. His parents had shown him what devotion looked like, not the fairy tale kind that ended when the credits rolled, but the real kind. The kind that chose each other every single morning. The kind that fought fair and forgave fast and never, ever let the sun set on anger. The song ended. Applause rippled through the ballroom. Larry brought Stephanie's hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles with a reverence that made her heart skip even now. "I love you," he said. Simple words, ancient words, words that meant everything. "I love you too," she whispered back, and meant it with every fiber of her being. They'd said it 10,000 times, in passion and in exhaustion, in joy and in sorrow, standing at altars and hospital beds and over coffee on lazy Sunday mornings. The words had never once felt like a lie. Later, much later, Stephanie would remember this moment. Would remember the weight of his hand in hers, the warmth of his smile, the way the light caught in his graying hair. She would remember thinking she was the luckiest woman alive. She would remember, and it would break her all over again. The weeks that followed were ordinary in the most beautiful way. Larry brought her coffee in bed each morning, kissed her forehead, asked about her day like every detail mattered. They laughed over dinner with Peter, planning his future, dreaming together like they always had. On Saturday afternoons, they had a tradition. Stephanie would make lunch, nothing fancy, just sandwiches or soup or whatever felt right, and bring it to Larry wherever he was. Sometimes he was at his desk, sometimes in the garden, sometimes just sitting on the porch watching the world go by. It was their time, their ritual, a small thing that said, "I see you, I choose you, you matter." This particular Saturday the sun was warm and generous. Stefani hummed as she wrapped the sandwiches, tucked them into a basket with fruit and the cookies Larry loved. She changed into a soft yellow dress that made her feel pretty, a dabbed perfume on her wrists, the jasmine scent he'd bought her for their last anniversary. She felt light, happy, grateful for this life they'd built together. The house was quiet when she walked through it. Peter was out with Avery. The housekeeper had the weekend off. It was just them, just like it had been in the beginning, when they were young and broke and deliriously in love in that tiny apartment that barely had room for a bed. She pushed open the door to Larry's private study. The smile already on her face, the words already forming. "I brought you something, baby." But he wasn't there. The room was empty. His chair sat vacant, leather worn smooth from years of him sitting there, thinking, working, being. Papers were scattered across his desk, nothing unusual. A coffee cup sat cold and forgotten, and on his chair, draped like it had been carelessly tossed and left behind, was a silk scarf. Stefani's steps slowed. She moved closer, the basket suddenly heavy in her hands. The scarf was expensive, designer, not hers. She knew every piece of fabric in her wardrobe had a memory attached to each one. This didn't belong to her. It was cream-colored, delicate, edged with gold thread that caught the afternoon light streaming through the windows. She reached out, fingers trembling slightly, though she didn't know why yet. Didn't want to know. The silk was cool against her skin, soft in that way that whispered money, taste, intention. And there, clinging to the fabric like an accusation, was a single strand of hair. Long, golden blonde, unmistakably not hers. Stefani's hair was natural, dark, textured in the way she'd learned to love after years of the world telling her it was wrong. This hair was straight, pale, belonging to someone else. Someone who had been here, in Larry's private space, close enough to leave pieces of herself behind. The basket slipped from her hands. It hit the floor with a dull thud. Fruit rolled across hardwood. Cookies scattered like shrapnel. She didn't notice. Her fingers closed around the scarf, bringing it to her face. The perfume hit her like a physical blow. Expensive, floral, cloying. Not jasmine, not hers. Never hers. The room tilted, the walls pressed in. The air turned thick and suffocating. 25 years. 25 years of mornings and midnights, of building a life brick by brick, kiss by kiss, promise by promise. 25 years of believing she knew this man, of trusting him with everything, her body, her heart, her future, her son. 25 years, and it took a single strand of hair to make her realize she'd been living in a beautiful, terrible lie. Her knees wanted to give out, her lungs wanted to scream. Every instinct demanded she storm through the house, find Larry, throw the scarf in his face, demand answers, burn everything down. But Stephanie Connell had not survived this world, had not thrived in it, by letting her emotions lead. She took a breath, then another, then a third, until her hands stopped shaking. She folded the scarf carefully, precisely, like it was evidence. Because that's what it was, wasn't it? Evidence. She picked up the fruit, the cookies, the basket, put everything back in order like nothing had happened, like her world hadn't just cracked down the middle. She walked out of Larry's study on steady legs, closed the door behind her with a soft click. In the hallway she paused, looked at the photographs lining the walls, their wedding day, Peter as a baby, vacations and holidays, and captured moments of joy. All those smiles, all those touches, all those promises. Had any of it been real, or had she been a fool from the very beginning? She walked to their bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed they'd shared for a quarter of a century. The scarf was still in her hands, the blonde hair still visible, still mocking. One strand of hair. That's all it took to destroy a kingdom. Stefani looked at herself in the mirror across the room. Saw a woman who'd believed in love, who'd fought for it, who'd built everything on the foundation of it, She looked at that woman for a long, long moment. Then she smiled. Not with joy, not with humor, with something darker, something colder, something that understood that if Larry Bohr had declared war on their marriage, on their life, on everything they'd built, then Stefani Connell would not just fight back. She would win. And when she did, he would understand that betraying a black woman who'd spent her entire life proving she was worthy of love was not a mistake you walked away from. It was a mistake that cost you everything. Chapter 2, The Mask of Grace. Stefani didn't sleep that night. She lay beside Larry in the darkness, listening to him breathe, feeling the warmth of his body next to hers, and wondered how many other nights he'd come home carrying someone else's scent. How many times he'd kissed her with lies still fresh on his lips. He stirred around dawn, reaching for her the way he always did. His hand found her waist, pulling her close, and she let him. Let him nuzzle into her neck. Let him whisper good morning against her skin. "Love you," he murmured, half asleep. Words slurred with comfort and habit. "Love you too," she whispered back. And the lie tasted like poison, but she smiled. She always smiled. When he left for the day, kissing her at the door like he had 1,000 mornings before, Stephanie stood at the window and watched his car disappear down the tree-lined street. Then she walked back to their bedroom, opened her closet, and pulled out the cream-colored scarf from where she'd hidden it behind her winter coats. She laid it on the bed, stared at it. That single blonde hair caught the morning light, glinting like a tiny golden blade. She picked up her phone, took a photograph, clear, detailed, undeniable. Then she folded the scarf back up and returned it to its hiding place. Evidence. She would need evidence. The perfume on the scarf was her next target. She'd recognized the weight of it, the complexity, expensive, exclusive, not something you bought at a department store. She got dressed, pulled her hair back, put on sunglasses that hid the shadows under her eyes. The boutique downtown was all glass and marble, the kind of place where salespeople sized you up before deciding whether to approach. Stefani walked in wearing confidence like armor, and they came running. "Can I help you find something?" The woman was young, eager, dripping in designer labels. Stefani pulled out her phone, showed the picture she'd taken of the scarf. "My husband bought me this scarf, and I loved the perfume that came with it, but I can't remember which one it was. Do you recognize the scent profile? Very floral, expensive, something with jasmine and rose, maybe." The woman studied the photo, then smiled. "Oh, that's definitely Lumiere Eternelle. We carry it, but it's quite exclusive. Would you like to try it?" "Please." She sprayed it on a test strip, handed it to Stephanie. The scent hit her immediately, the same cloying floral assault from the scarf. Her stomach turned, but she kept her expression pleasant. "That's the one. Thank you so much. Would you like a bottle? It's quite lovely. Not today, but I appreciate your help." She left the boutique with the name of the perfume and a sick feeling in her chest. Lumière éternelle, eternal light. How poetic for the woman trying to steal her husband. Back home, she sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, searched the perfume. The results confirmed what she'd suspected. Expensive, exclusive, sold only in select boutiques. The kind of thing a man bought for a woman he wanted to impress. The kind of thing Larry had never bought for her. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She could keep searching. Could try to find out who this woman was. But something in her chest, pride maybe, or pain, made her stop. She didn't need to know the woman's name. Not yet. What she needed was to understand the scope of Larry's betrayal. How long, how deep, how much of their life together had been theater. The front door opened. Stefani closed her laptop, smoothed her expression into something soft and welcoming. "Mom!" Peter walked in, backpack slung over one shoulder, looking tired from whatever he'd been doing all day. Her son, her beautiful, brilliant boy, who looked so much like his father it sometimes hurt. "Hey, baby, you hungry? I can make you something." He dropped the backpack, came over, kissed the top of her head. "I'm good." "Where's Dad?" "Working late." The lie came so easily now. She didn't even know if it was a lie. Maybe he was working. Maybe he was with her, the blonde woman who wore expensive perfume and left pieces of herself in Larry's private spaces. Peter sat down across from her, and something in her face must have shown because his expression shifted. "Mom, you okay?" She looked at her son, her boy, who'd grown into a man who protected the people he loved, who believed in loyalty and honor because that's what they'd taught him, who trusted his father completely because why wouldn't he? The truth sat on her tongue, heavy and sharp. She could tell him right now, could show him the scarf, the hair, the evidence of his father's betrayal, could watch her son's world shatter the way hers had, or she could wait, could be strategic, could make sure that when Peter learned the truth, it would be on her terms, in a way that wouldn't destroy him completely. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired." He studied her for a long moment, those blue eyes, Larry's eyes, seeing more than she wanted him to. "You sure?" "I'm sure." But he didn't leave. He sat there, watching her, and she could feel him trying to read between the lines of her expression. "Peter," she said quietly, "if you found out someone you loved had lied to you, betrayed you, would you confront them right away? Or would you wait until you understood the full picture?" His brow furrowed. "Is this about Dad?" Her heart stopped. "What? Is he doing something?" "Because if he hurt you, Mom, I swear—" "No." She reached across the table, took his hand. "No, baby! It's not about your father. It's just a hypothetical. I was talking to Camilla earlier about her daughter's situation, and it got me thinking. The lie worked." Peter relaxed slightly, though suspicion still lingered in his eyes. "I'd wait," he said finally. "If it was me, I'd make sure I had all the facts before I made a move. Because you can't take back an accusation. Can't unring that bell. That's smart. You taught me that. You and Dad both." He squeezed her hand. "You taught me that love is built on trust, but trust has to be earned. And if someone breaks it, they don't deserve to have it back until they've proven themselves." Stefani felt tears threatening and pushed them down, locked them away in that place where she was storing all her grief, all her rage, all her shattered faith. "You're a good man, Peter. I had good teachers." After he left, she sat alone in the kitchen as the light faded outside. The house was quiet, empty. Larry wouldn't be home for hours if he came home at all. She pulled out her phone, looked at the picture of the scarf again. Then she opened her messages and typed out a text to her best friend, Camilla. "Need to see you. Tomorrow. It's important." The response came within seconds. "Always. Coffee at our spot." "Yes, thank you." She set the phone down, took a breath. Then another. Tomorrow she would start building her case. Tomorrow she would begin the careful, strategic dismantling of Larry Boer's perfect life. Tomorrow she would stop being the woman who cried alone in her kitchen and start being the woman who won. But tonight she would put on her silk nightgown and wait for her husband to come home. She would smile when he kissed her, would curl into his arms when he pulled her close, would let him believe everything was fine, because that was the game now. That was the mask she would wear until the moment came to tear it off. And when that moment came, Larry would realize he'd been sleeping next to a queen who was 10 moves ahead of him the entire time. The door opened around midnight. Larry came in quietly, trying not to wake her. But Stefani was awake, had been awake, would probably be awake for weeks. She heard him undress, heard the shower running, heard him brush his teeth, go through all the rituals of a man with nothing to hide. When he climbed into bed, she stirred as if he'd woken her. "Hey," she whispered. "You're home." "Sorry, baby. Didn't mean to wake you." He kissed her temple, settled against her. "Long day. I missed you." "Missed you too." And there it was. The ease of his lie, the comfort of his deception. He held her like she was precious, kissed her like she was loved. And somewhere else in this city, a blonde woman was probably falling asleep thinking about him too. Stefani closed her eyes and held her husband close. Tomorrow, the war would begin. But tonight, she would let him think he'd already won. Chapter 3. The Sun's Vengeance. Peter couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with his mother. He'd seen it in her eyes, that carefully controlled pain, the way she'd smiled, but it hadn't reached her face. Something was happening, and his father was involved. He sat in his apartment that night. Avery curled up beside him on the couch, but his mind was miles away. "You're doing it again," Avery said softly, poking his arm. "Doing what?" Thinking so hard I can practically hear it. "What's going on?" Peter looked at his girlfriend, this woman who'd been patient with him, loving with him, who understood that family meant everything. "Something's off with my parents." "Off how?" "I don't know. That's the problem." He ran a hand through his hair. "My mom asked me this weird hypothetical about betrayal and waiting to confront someone. And she looked, God, Avery, she looked broken. Just for a second. Then she covered it up." Avery sat up, tucking her legs under her. "You think your dad did something?" "That. I don't want to think that. But yeah, maybe. What are you going to do?" Peter was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his laptop, set it on the coffee table, stared at the blank screen. "I'm going to find out the truth. Peter, I know what you're going to say, that I shouldn't invade his privacy, that I should just ask him. But if he's hurt my mother, Avery, if he's done something to break her trust, I need to know. She won't tell me. She's protecting me like she always does. But I'm not a kid anymore. I can handle whatever this is." Avery was quiet, then nodded. "Okay, what do you need?" "Huh?" What he needed were answers, and Peter had always been good at finding answers in places other people couldn't look. He'd grown up in the digital age, taught himself programming as a teenager, went to college for computer science because he loved the logic of it, the certainty. Code didn't lie. Numbers didn't deceive. Unlike people, unlike his father, apparently. Over the next few days, Peter watched. He came home more often, showing up unannounced, looking for signs he'd missed. He watched the way his father kissed his mother goodbye, watched the way his mother's smile would slip the moment his father turned away, watched the careful dance they were doing, and realized with growing horror that only one of them knew they were dancing. His father thought everything was fine. His mother knew it wasn't. Wednesday evening, Peter was at his parents' house for dinner. Larry was animated, telling some story about a client, laughing at his own jokes. Stefani listened with that practiced attention, nodding in the right places, asking questions that made Larry feel heard. But Peter saw what his father didn't, the way her fingers tightened around her wine glass, the way her jaw clenched for just a second when Larry mentioned working late, the way she excused herself to the kitchen and stood there, alone, breathing like she was trying not to fall apart. He followed her, found her gripping the counter, eyes closed, shoulders tight. "Mom?" She straightened immediately, turned with that bright smile. "Hey, baby. Just checking on the dessert." "Mom, stop, please. I know something's wrong." Her smile faltered. For a moment, she looked like she might deny it. Then something in her face shifted, a decision being made. "Not here," she whispered. "Tomorrow. Come see me when your father's gone." He nodded. Wanted to push, wanted to demand answers now, but respected her enough to wait. That night after dinner, after his father had hugged him and his mother had kissed his cheek and he'd driven home in a fog of dread, Peter made a decision. He opened his laptop, pulled up programs he'd written years ago and hadn't used since, tools for accessing protected information, for tracing digital footprints, for finding what people tried to hide. His father's email password had been the same for years. Peter had helped him set up his accounts, had reminded him a dozen times to change it. Larry never did. Too trusting, too comfortable, too careless. Peter's fingers hovered over the keys. This was a line. Once he crossed it, there was no going back. He'd know things he couldn't unknow, see things he couldn't unsee. But if his father had hurt his mother, if Larry Bohr had betrayed the woman who'd loved him unconditionally, who'd stood beside him through everything, then Peter needed to know. He typed in the password. Hit enter. The inbox loaded. Thousands of emails. Business correspondence, client communications, spam. Peter filtered by date. started scrolling through recent messages. Nothing unusual at first. Then he saw it, a name that appeared over and over. Sienna Hayes. The subject lines were innocuous. Meeting notes, follow-up questions, schedule confirmation. He opened one. Last night was beautiful. Can't stop thinking about you. When can I see you again? Peter's blood ran cold. He opened another. I bought you something. Wore it this morning and thought of you. Can't wait to give it to you properly. Another. I know this is complicated, but I don't care. I love you. Tell me you feel the same. Peter pushed back from the desk, feeling sick. His hands were shaking. His vision blurred. No, this wasn't real. His father couldn't, but the emails kept coming. Months of them. Intimate messages. Plans to meet. Declarations of affection that should have been for his mother. Only his mother, always his mother. He opened another email, this one with an attachment. A photo. He clicked it before his brain could stop him. His father and a blonde woman sitting close in what looked like an expensive restaurant. Larry's hand on her knee. Both of them smiling like they shared a secret. Like they were the only two people in the world who mattered. Peter's stomach lurched. He barely made it to the bathroom before he was sick. When he came back, Avery was standing in the doorway of his office, her face pale. She'd seen the screen, seen the evidence of what his father had become. How long have you been standing there? His voice came out hoarse. Long enough. She crossed to him, but he pulled away. Couldn't bear to be touched right now. Couldn't bear anything. My whole life was built on their love, he said, staring at the computer screen. Every choice I made, every value I have, it all came from watching them, from believing that what they had was real, was permanent, was worth aspiring to. Peter, he taught me to be loyal, to be honest, to treat women with respect. A bitter laugh escaped him. And the whole time he was lying. To Mom, to me, to everyone. He sat back down, started scrolling again with mechanical precision. If he was going to destroy his own faith in his father, he might as well do it thoroughly. More emails, more evidence. Some were practical. Thursday at 3, same place. Others were worse. Declarations of feelings that should have belonged to his mother alone. Promises about a future together. Plans for when things were less complicated. He was going to leave her, Peter whispered. Look at this one. He's talking about telling Mom, about starting over with Sienna. Avery read over his shoulder. That's from 2 months ago. He didn't do it. He didn't tell her. Just kept playing the perfect husband while planning his escape. Peter's hands curled into fists. She had no idea. She was still bringing him lunch, still smiling at him, still believing in their marriage. He thought about his mother's face at dinner, the careful control, the pain she'd been hiding. How long had she known? How long had she been carrying this alone? I need to find everything, he said. Every email, every receipt, every piece of evidence. Mom's going to need it all. Avery came into the room, took one look at his face, and rushed over. Baby, what is it? He couldn't speak, just turned the laptop so she could see. She read silently, her expression hardening. Oh, Peter, how long? His voice came out broken. How long has he been lying to us? They went through the emails together, found confirmations for hotel rooms, receipts for jewelry, flowers, dinners at expensive restaurants. A pattern that stretched back further than Peter wanted to accept. Each new discovery was a knife to the heart. His father buying Sienna a bracelet, platinum and diamonds, the receipt time-stamped on a Wednesday afternoon when he'd told his mother he was in meetings. An email thread planning a weekend away. Larry telling Sienna he'd told his wife he had a conference. Photos attached to messages, the two of them at overlooks, at beaches, in hotel rooms that cost more per night than most people made in a week. Peter's childhood flashed through his mind in sharp, painful fragments. His father teaching him to ride a bike, patient and encouraging. His father at his graduation, tears in his eyes, saying how proud he was. His father giving him advice about relationships. Find someone who makes you better, someone you'd never want to hurt. That's how you know it's real. All of it contaminated now, all of it revealed as words from a man who didn't live by his own principles. There's more, Avery said quietly, pointing at a folder labeled Travel. Peter opened it, found itineraries for trips his father had taken for work. Except the hotel reservations were for 2 people. The restaurant bookings were for romantic dinners. One email confirmed a couple's massage at a luxury spa. "This one's from when Mom thought he was at that conference in Seattle," Peter said, his voice hollow. "She was home alone, missing him, and he couldn't finish. Didn't need to." The sun rose while they worked, light creeping through the windows as Peter methodically documented his father's double life. He created spreadsheets, organized emails by date and content, downloaded attachments, built a timeline that showed not just an affair, but a systematic pattern of deception. By the time he finished, he had everything. Every lie, every betrayal, every moment when Larry Bauer had chosen someone else over the family he'd promised to cherish. His father had been living a double life. And his mother, God, his mother had figured it out somehow and had been carrying this alone. By the time the sun rose, Peter had downloaded everything. Every email, every receipt, every piece of evidence of Larry Barker's betrayal. He saved it all to a drive, then to the cloud, then to a second backup because he wasn't taking any chances. Then he drove to his parents' house, waited until his father left for the day, and knocked on the door. His mother answered in her robe, eyes red like she'd been crying. When she saw him, saw the look on his face, something in her expression broke and mended all at once. "You know," she said quietly. "I know." She let him in. They sat at the kitchen table, that same table where they'd had 1,000 family dinners, where he'd done homework as a kid, where his parents had always seemed so solid, so unshakable. "How did you find out?" she asked. "His emails. I shouldn't have looked, but I couldn't. Mom, I couldn't just stand by and let him hurt you." She reached across the table, took his hand. Her grip was strong, despite the tears on her cheeks. "Oh, sweetheart, I didn't want you to carry this. You shouldn't have to carry it alone. When did you find it?" Saturday. There was a scarf, and a hair, and perfume that wasn't mine." She told him everything, the discovery, the boutique, the careful investigation she'd started. "I didn't know how to tell you. Didn't know if I should. Mom, I'm not a child. And if he's doing this to you, to us, then I'm standing with you. Whatever you need, whatever you're planning." She looked at him for a long moment, and Peter saw his mother transform before his eyes. The broken woman hardened into something fierce, something unstoppable. Peter pulled out his laptop, opened the files he'd compiled through the night. "I have everything, Mom, months of emails, hotel receipts, photos, a complete timeline. He's been with her for over a year." Stefani's face remained calm, but her fingers tightened around her coffee cup. "Show me," he did. Every email, every receipt, every piece of evidence of his father's betrayal. His mother read through it all, with the focus of a general studying battle plans. When she reached the photos, Larry and Sienna together, intimate and comfortable, Peter saw a muscle jump in her jaw, but she didn't look away. "Her name is Sienna Hayes," Peter said. "She's a consultant for his firm. Started working there about the same time this began." "Of course she did." Stefani's voice was flat. "He hired her. Probably created the position just to keep her close." "Mom, there's something else." Peter hesitated, then showed her the email where Larry discussed leaving. "He was planning to tell you, to end the marriage, but he never did. Just kept stringing you both along." "Coward," Stefani whispered. Then louder, stronger, "He's a coward." Wanted his perfect wife at home and his exciting mistress on the side, and thought he could have both forever. "What I'm planning," she said slowly, "is to take everything from him, not out of spite, not out of revenge, but because he's proven he doesn't deserve what we built together. And I need to know you're ready for that. Because it's going to get ugly, Peter. It's going to hurt." "Good," Peter said, and meant it. "Show me what you need." Together they spread out everything, his evidence and hers, the scarf, the emails, the receipts, the pattern of lies. There's more we need, Stefani said, her voice steady now, strategic. I need to know about their relationship, where they've been, when they meet, everything. I can get that. Give me a few days. And Peter? Not a word to your father. Not a hint that we know. We smile. We play along. We let him think he's gotten away with it. Until... His mother smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Peter had ever seen. Until I'm ready to burn his world down. Chapter 4. The Business of Betrayal. Stefani had built half of everything Larry claimed as his. That was the truth nobody talked about, the reality that got erased in favor of the story people preferred. Successful man, supportive wife, beautiful partnership. But Stefani Connell hadn't been just supportive. She'd been essential. When they'd started out, when Larry was just a man with big dreams and bigger debts, Stefani had worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat. She'd networked with people he couldn't reach, opened doors he couldn't unlock. When his first major client almost walked away, she'd been the one to invite them to dinner, to charm them, to make them see Larry's vision. She'd done it all while pregnant with Peter, while raising their son, while being told again and again that she should just be grateful Larry had married her at all. And then, when the money started coming in, when Larry's name started meaning something, she'd stepped back, not because he'd asked her to, but because the world had made it clear. A successful man didn't need his wife in the boardroom. He needed her at home, looking beautiful, raising their son, being the perfect accessory to his achievements. So she'd stepped back, but she'd never stepped away. She still held the keys, still knew the players, still had relationships that predated Larry's success and would outlast his fall. Now, sitting in an upscale cafe with Gabriel Stone, she was about to use them. Gabriel was older than Larry, silver-haired and distinguished, with the kind of presence that came from decades of boardroom battles. He'd been with them from the beginning, had believed in Larry when others hadn't, and had always treated Stefani with genuine respect. "Stefani," he said warmly, standing as she approached. "It's been too long. How are you?" "I'm well, Gabriel. Thank you for meeting me." They ordered coffee, exchanged pleasantries, danced around the real reason she'd called this meeting. Gabriel was too smart not to know she wanted something, but polite enough to let her get there in her own time. Stefani watched him carefully, remembering the early days when Gabriel had been the only board member willing to take a chance on Larry's vision. He was principled, loyal, but his loyalty was to the company first, to people second. That was what she was counting on. "I wanted to talk to you about something," Stefani said finally, setting down her cup. "Nay." "About the direction of the firm?" Gabriel's expression shifted slightly. "Go on." "Larry's been making decisions lately that concern me. I know I'm not in the daily operations anymore, but I still care deeply about what we built. And I'm worried he's becoming distracted." "Distracted how?" She let the pause linger, let Gabriel's sharp mind fill in the blanks she wasn't saying out loud. "I see." He sat back, studied her carefully. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying that Larry's focus isn't where it should be, and that concerns me as someone who has a stake in this company's success. It should concern you too." Gabriel was quiet for a long moment, and Stefani could see him processing, connecting dots he'd perhaps noticed but not acknowledged. "I have observed certain irregularities, missed meetings, decisions made hastily without proper consultation. A consultant who seems to have more access than her role warrants." So he'd noticed Sienna. Of course he had. Gabriel noticed everything. "That consultant," Stefani said carefully, "has been quite close to Larry, hasn't she?" Inappropriately close, I'd say. Though I had no proof, just instinct." He looked at Stefani with something like sympathy. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to understand the scope of the problem. Long enough to know that this isn't just personal, it's affecting the company, his judgment, his priorities. What would you have me do?" "Nothing yet. Just watch. Pay attention to where his priorities are. And if you notice what I'm noticing, perhaps we should talk about ensuring the company's stability. Regardless of personal circumstances, it was delicate, careful. She wasn't accusing Larry of anything directly, wasn't sharing her evidence, not yet. She was simply planting a seed, letting Gabriel's own observations water it. "You've always been the steady hand," Gabriel said quietly, "even when you weren't in the room. I'd like to be in the room again, if circumstances require it. I'll watch," he promised. "And Stefani? If what you're implying is true, if Larry is making choices that could damage what all of us have built, you'll have my support." "You've earned it." She left the cafe feeling lighter, stronger. One piece moved, many more to go. Over the following weeks, Stefani worked quietly, methodically. She called old clients, people who remembered her contributions, who valued her judgment. She didn't badmouth Larry, didn't reveal the affair. She simply reminded them that she existed, that she was available, that if they ever needed anything, her door was open. One lunch meeting stood out particularly. Harrison Webb, a client from the early days, who'd built his own empire and valued loyalty above all else. He'd always credited Stefani with helping him navigate a critical merger years ago when Larry had been too inexperienced to see the pitfalls. "Stefani Connell," Harrison said, embracing her warmly. "I was wondering when you'd come back to us. The firm hasn't been the same without your touch. That's kind of you to say. Not kind, honest. Larry's talented, don't misunderstand me. But you understood people. You saw connections others missed. Some of us have been waiting for you to step back into the light." They talked about the industry, about opportunities, about the future. And when Harrison asked casually if she'd be interested in consulting on some of his projects, Stefani smiled. "I might be starting something new soon, my own venture. If that happens, I'd love to work with you again. You let me know the moment that happens. You'll have my full support." She had lunch with Camilla, her best friend who'd stood by her through everything, and finally told her the truth. Camilla's face cycled through shock, rage, grief. "That son of a Stefani, I'm so sorry. What can I do? Be here. That's all. Just be here when I need you, always. God, I want to kill him. Get in line." But then Camilla leaned forward, her voice dropping. "Remember when we had dinner with them last month? Larry kept checking his phone, kept excusing himself to take calls. I thought he was just being rude, but he was probably texting her. And you sat there smiling, playing the perfect wife while knowing..." Camilla's eyes filled with tears. "How are you this strong?" "I'm not strong. I'm furious. There's a difference." She met with Jasper Cole, the family attorney who'd handled their estate planning, their wills, all the legal scaffolding of their life together. "I need to understand something," she said, sitting in his office with the door closed. "Hypothetically, if a marriage were to end, and that marriage included significant shared assets, how would those assets be divided?" Jasper was too professional to react, but she saw understanding flicker in his eyes. "Hypothetically, it would depend on numerous factors. How the assets were acquired, what documentation exists regarding contribution and ownership, whether there were prenuptial agreements. We don't have a prenup. Then it becomes more complicated, but also more flexible. If, hypothetically, one party could demonstrate significant contribution to asset acquisition, and if that party could show the other party had engaged in behavior that violated the marriage contract, say, infidelity, then the division could potentially be favorable. How favorable? And with the right evidence and strategy? Very. Jasper pulled out a legal pad, began sketching scenarios. You'd want to establish a clear timeline of your contributions to the business. Document everything, initial investments, sweat equity, client relationships you brought in. Then you'd need ironclad proof of the affair. Dates, locations, financial evidence showing company resources being used inappropriately. I have all of that. He looked up, sharp and assessing. Then hypothetically, you're in an excellent position. Better than most. She left his office with paperwork, with plans, with the skeleton of what would become Larry's unraveling. She registered a new company. Connell Enterprises. Her name, her vision, her future. The process was surprisingly simple. She sat in a government office filling out forms, and with each signature she felt herself becoming someone new. Not Larry's wife, not the woman defined by her marriage. Just Stephanie Connell, founder and CEO. She contacted suppliers, the ones who'd known her before Larry became important. The ones who still called her Mrs. Borger with genuine warmth instead of obligatory politeness. She negotiated new contracts. Better terms, exclusive agreements that would shift when she was ready. One supplier in particular, a man named Vincent, who'd been working with them since the beginning, seemed to understand what she was doing without her having to say it explicitly. Mrs. Borger, I've always said you were the brains behind the operation. If you're branching out on your own, you'll have my full support. Better terms than I ever gave Larry, and that's a promise. I appreciate that, Vincent. More than you know. And through it all, she came home every night and smiled at her husband, asked about his day, listened to his stories, let him hold her, let him believe she was still his. One evening, Larry came home with theater tickets. That show you wanted to see? Got us seats for next month. Front row. Larry, that's wonderful. She kissed him, genuine pleasure mixing with bitter irony. He was trying to be a good husband while actively betraying her. The cognitive dissonance must be exhausting. You deserve good things, he said, pulling her close. You deserve everything. So do you, she replied, and meant it in ways he couldn't comprehend. He deserved everything that was coming to him, because that was the final piece of her strategy. Larry had to believe everything was normal, had to think she was oblivious. Had to get comfortable, careless, confident. Peter helped. Her brilliant son, who'd taken his pain and turned it into purpose. He showed her everything he'd found, not just emails now, but tracking data. GPS coordinates from Larry's phone that showed patterns. Hotels on the other side of town. Restaurants they'd never been to together. Timestamps that revealed the shape of the affair. He takes her to the Meridian Hotel, Peter said, pointing at the screen. Every Thursday afternoon, has been for months. Stephanie stared at the information, feeling that familiar twist of pain and rage. Thursday afternoons, when he told her he had meetings, when she'd been planning dinners and doing laundry and living her normal life, Larry had been across town with someone else. Can you get footage? But from the hotel? That's harder, but yeah, I can try. Try hard, baby. We need it all. One evening, Larry came home with flowers, roses, her favorite. What's this for? She asked, genuinely surprised. Do I need a reason to bring my beautiful wife flowers? She buried her face in the blooms, inhaled their scent, and wondered if he'd brought sienna flowers too, if she'd gotten roses, or if Larry had chosen something different for her. Something special. They're beautiful. Thank you. He kissed her long and deep, and she kissed him back. Let herself feel the muscle memory of loving him. Let herself remember when his kisses had meant everything. Then she stepped back, smiled, and went to put the flowers in water. In the kitchen, alone, she stared at the roses. They were perfect, blood red, thornless. She took one stem out of the vase, carried it upstairs to her closet, where she'd been collecting evidence, laid it next to the cream-colored scarf with its single blonde hair, a catalogue of betrayal. Growing larger every day. Soon, she thought. Soon it would be enough. And when it was, Larry Boer would learn what it cost to break a queen's heart. Chapter 5. The Other Woman. Her name was Sienna Hayes, and she thought she was special. Stephanie learned this from Peter, who tracked her down through the emails, through social media, through the digital footprints people left without thinking. Sienna Hayes, consultant, blonde and beautiful, in that effortless way that came from money and privilege. Never married, no children, free to be the exciting escape from Larry's complicated life, free to be everything Stephanie wasn't. She's nobody, Mum, Peter had said, showing her the profile. Just another woman who thinks she can take what's not hers. But Stephanie had looked at those photos, Sienna at parties, Sienna traveling, Sienna living a life uncomplicated by vows and promises and the weight of building something real, and understood exactly why Larry had chosen her. She was easy. She was fresh. She was the fantasy of starting over without actually having to sacrifice anything. Stefani studied the social media profiles carefully. Sienna posted constantly. Brunches with girlfriends, sunset photos with inspirational quotes, carefully curated images of a life that looked perfect from the outside. Recent posts showed her at restaurants Stefani recognized from Larry's credit card statements. A photo of champagne glasses with the caption "Celebrating Life's Beautiful Moments" was posted on a Thursday evening. The same Thursday, Peter's tracking showed Larry's phone at the Meridian Hotel. She was documenting their affair without even realizing it. Every post was another piece of evidence. Stefani almost pitied her. Almost. The firm was hosting an event, something about community outreach and networking. Larry had mentioned it casually, asked if she wanted to come, seemed pleased when she'd said yes. He'd been more attentive lately, probably guilty about something. More flowers, more compliments, more effort. She wondered if Sienna had asked him to leave his wife yet, wondered if he'd promised her he would, wondered how long women like Sienna believe promises from married men. The event was downtown, elegant in that understated way wealthy people preferred. Stefani wore deep emerald green, a dress that hugged her curves and made her skin glow. She'd taken extra time with her makeup, with her hair. If Sienna Hayes was going to be there, and Peter's research suggested she would be, then Stefani wanted her to see exactly what she was trying to replace. Larry couldn't take his eyes off her in the car. "You look stunning. Thank you. I'm lucky. You know that, right? Luckiest man alive." She smiled, squeezed his hand. "I know you are." The venue was packed when they arrived. Larry's hand rested on the small of her back, proprietary, proud. They moved through the crowd together, accepting congratulations and small talk, playing their roles perfectly. Then Stefani saw her. Blonde hair catching the light, blue dress. Younger than Stefani by at least a decade, but not as young as she tried to appear. Pretty in a generic sort of way. Nothing special, nothing remarkable, nothing worth destroying a marriage over. Larry hadn't noticed her yet. He was talking to someone about golf, laughing at jokes that weren't funny. But Stefani watched as Sienna's eyes found Larry across the room, watched her face light up, watched her start moving toward them with the confidence of someone who thought she had a right to be there. Stefani felt her heart rate slow, her focus sharpen. This was the woman who'd been sleeping with her husband, who'd been receiving gifts bought with money Stefani had helped earn, who'd been listening to Larry's complaints about his complicated life while having no idea of the woman who'd made that life possible. Larry. A voice, bright and professional. Sienna standing beside them now, smiling. "So good to see you." Larry turned and Stefani watched his face carefully. Saw the flash of panic, the quick recovery, the easy professional smile. "Sienna, good to see you too." He turned to Stefani, smooth as silk. "Honey, this is Sienna Hayes, one of our consultants." "Sienna, my wife, Stefani." Stefani extended her hand. "It's lovely to meet you." Sienna's handshake was firm, but Stefani felt the slight tremor in her fingers. Nervous. Good. She should be. "You too. Larry talks about you all the time." "Does he?" Stefani kept her smile warm, curious. "All good things, I hope." "Always." Sienna's eyes flicked to Larry, something passing between them that she tried to hide. "He's very devoted." "He is," Stefani agreed, wrapping her arm around Larry's waist, pulling him closer than necessary. 25 years and counting. Some people say the passion fades, but we've been blessed. It only seems to get stronger. She felt Larry stiffen slightly beside her. Saw Sienna's smile tighten at the edges. "That's wonderful," Sienna said, but her voice had lost some of its brightness. "You're very lucky." "I am. We both are." Stefani looked up at Larry, letting all her love, real or performed, show in her eyes. "Aren't we, darling?" "Very lucky," Larry managed, kissing her temple. Stefani turned her attention back to Sienna, really looking at her this time. Studied the way she held herself, the expensive dress that still somehow looked cheap on her, the makeup that was trying too hard. This was the woman who thought she could replace a quarter-century of marriage. "How long have you been working with Larry?" Stefani asked, voice honey-sweet. "About a year now." "A year. How lovely. And you enjoy it? Consulting?" "Very much. Larry's been an excellent mentor." Mentor. The word hung in the air between them, loaded with irony that only Stefani fully appreciated. Someone called Sienna's name from across the room. She excused herself with a gracious smile, but not before Stefani saw the flash of something in her eyes. Confusion, uncertainty, the first crack in whatever story Larry had been telling her. When she was gone, Larry exhaled. "She's very good at her job. Smart woman. She seems lovely," Stefani said easily. "Young, though. Is she new?" "Been with us about a year." "A year." So the affair had started almost immediately. Larry had met Sienna Hayes and decided that everything he had at home, everything they'd built together, wasn't enough. The rest of the evening was torture disguised as elegance. Stefani watched Sienna from across the room, saw the way the younger woman kept glancing at Larry, seeking his attention, saw Larry deliberately not looking, playing the devoted husband, while his mistress stood 30 feet away, pretending not to care. At one point, Stefani caught Sienna staring at her. Their eyes met, and Stefani smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine, watched Sienna's confusion deepen. This wasn't the wife she'd expected. Larry had probably painted Stefani as cold, distant, someone who didn't understand him. Not this radiant woman who looked at her husband with obvious love. Good. Let her be confused. Let her start questioning everything Larry had told her. Stefani excused herself to the restroom. Needed a moment away from the performance, from the smile, from the suffocating presence of her husband and his mistress in the same room. She was washing her hands when the door opened behind her. Sienna Hayes walked in, their eyes meeting in the mirror. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Sienna smiled, carefully neutral. "Your husband is wonderful." "Yes, he is." "You're lucky to have him." Stefani turned, faced her directly, took in every detail. The way Sienna's hands were shaking slightly, the way her lipstick was smudged at one corner, the desperation hiding behind the confidence. This was a woman who knew, on some level, that she was fighting a losing battle. "I know," Stefani said quietly, "and I intend to keep him." Something shifted in Sienna's expression. Calculation, assessment. She was wondering how much Stefani knew, how much Larry had told his wife about late meetings and complicated projects. "Of course," Sienna said smoothly. "A marriage like yours is rare." "It is," Stefani agreed, moving closer, invading Sienna's space just enough to make her uncomfortable. "Which is why I protect it fiercely. Some women think they can take what belongs to others. They think being young or pretty or uncomplicated gives them some kind of right." She paused, let the words sink in. "But those women always learn the same lesson eventually. You can't build a future on someone else's foundation. It always collapses." The warning was delivered with a smile, but it was a warning nonetheless. Sienna heard it. Stefani could see the moment it registered, the way her shoulders straightened, her chin lifted defensively. "I should get back," Sienna said, her voice not quite steady. "Of course." "Lovely meeting you, Sienna." Stefani watched her leave, saw the tension in the younger woman's shoulders, the hurried click of her heels. She'd rattled her. Good. Alone in the restroom, Stefani gripped the sink and let herself feel everything she'd been holding back. The rage, the hurt, the desperate desire to scream, but she didn't scream. She took a breath, fixed her lipstick, smoothed her dress, became, once again, the perfect wife. When she returned to the party, Larry was waiting for her, looking relieved. "You okay?" "Perfect, why?" "Just making sure. I know these events can be exhausting." She took his arm, let him lead her back into the crowd. But her eyes found Sienna across the room, and their gazes locked for just a moment. 2 women, 1 man, a battlefield neither of them had asked for, but both of them were now standing on. The difference was, Sienna thought she was fighting for Larry's love. Stephanie was fighting for justice, and there was no contest about which force would win. As they left the event that night, Larry's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then quickly put it away. "Work?" Stephanie asked innocently. "Just a reminder about something tomorrow." She nodded, said nothing more, but she'd seen the name on the screen before he'd hidden it. Sienna. In the car ride home, Larry held her hand, told her how beautiful she'd been tonight, how proud he was to have her by his side, and Stephanie smiled and thanked him and let him believe everything was fine, because soon, very soon, he would realize that the woman sitting beside him wasn't the trusting wife he'd been deceiving. She was a queen who'd been gathering her army, and war was coming. Chapter 6. Moving Pieces. The hotel footage was the breakthrough they needed. Peter had spent weeks working on it, calling in favors, using connections Stephanie didn't ask about because sometimes it was better not to know. When he finally showed up at her door with a USB drive and exhaustion written across his face, she knew he'd found something. "The Meridian keeps their security footage for 90 days, he said, sitting at her kitchen table while Larry was across town at what he'd called an investor dinner. "I managed to get access to the last 2 months. "How?" "Mom, trust me, you don't want details. But I got it. And it's—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "It's bad." She took the drive from him, turned it over in her hands. This small piece of plastic held proof of her husband's betrayal, captured in digital permanence. Part of her didn't want to see it, wanted to live in the small remaining space where she could tell herself maybe it wasn't as bad as she thought. But she'd never been a coward, and she wouldn't start now. "Show me." They watched together. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Larry's car pulling into the hotel parking garage, the timestamp showing Thursday afternoon. Larry walking through the lobby, relaxed, confident, carrying himself like a man with nothing to hide. And then, minutes later, Sienna Hayes joining him, looking around nervously before approaching. The way she touched his arm, the way he smiled down at her. The intimate familiarity of 2 people who'd done this many times before. The elevator. Timestamps that showed they'd been together for hours. Stephanie watched as they emerged later, Larry adjusting his tie, Sienna's hair slightly messed, both of them looking satisfied and comfortable. They separated in the lobby, Sienna leaving first, Larry waiting exactly 7 minutes before following. Calculated, practiced, routine. The same routine. Thursday after Thursday. Different occasions too. Lunch breaks, evening meetings that ran late, mornings before work. Peter had compiled it all. Week after week of Larry arriving at the Meridian, Sienna meeting him, both of them disappearing for hours. Sometimes they'd have dinner first at the hotel restaurant. Once the footage showed them in the bar, Larry's hand on her knee under the table, both of them laughing like teenagers. Stephanie watched it all with a face like stone. When it was done, she sat back, closed her eyes, and let herself feel the finality of it. This was real, undeniable. Her husband of 25 years, the father of her son, the man who still told her he loved her every single day. He was living a complete double life with precision and practice. "I'm sorry, Mom." "Don't be sorry. This is what we needed." She opened her eyes, looked at her son. "How many instances can you document?" "At least a dozen at this hotel alone. Probably more at other locations. The emails reference places I haven't tracked down yet. Get them all. Every location, every date. I want a timeline that's airtight." Peter nodded but hesitated. "Mom, there's something else. In one of the emails, Dad mentions taking her on a trip. He told you it was a conference in Seattle." "I remember. I stayed home with the flu. He wasn't at a conference. I found the hotel reservation. A suite for 2 people. They spent an entire weekend together while you were sick at home." The pain of that cut deeper than everything else. She'd been ill, vulnerable, and Larry had chosen to be with Sienna instead. Had probably been relieved to have the excuse to leave. Peter nodded. What are you going to do with it? I'm going to make sure that when this comes out, there's no room for doubt. No way for him to explain it away. No possibility of him playing the victim. She stood, paced the kitchen. How much longer until you have everything? 2 weeks. Maybe less if I push. Push, the anniversary is coming. You're really going to do it then? At the party. Stefani turned to face him. Would you prefer I do it privately? Let him save face? Let him control the narrative? No. Peter's voice was hard. No, he doesn't deserve that. But, Mum, everyone we know will be there. Family, friends, colleagues. It's going to be devastating, I know. That's the point, Peter. Your father made a choice to humiliate me, to disrespect our marriage in front of the world while playing the devoted husband. So yes, the world is going to watch when I take back my dignity. Peter stood, walked to his mother, pulled her into a hug. I love you. You know that, right? And I'm with you. Whatever you need. I know, baby. I love you too. After he left, Stephanie sat alone in the house she'd turned into a home. The house where she'd raised her son, celebrated birthdays, hosted dinners, made love to her husband in every room because they'd been that couple. The one everyone envied. She walked through each space, remembering. The living room where they danced on random Tuesday nights just because. The kitchen where Larry had proposed. Not at some fancy restaurant, but right here, with flour in her hair from baking and love in his eyes. Their bedroom where she'd held him through nightmares, where he'd kissed her awake on countless mornings, where they'd whispered plans and dreams and promises. All of it real, all of it true, all of it destroyed by his choice to want more than her. She found herself in Larry's study, the same room where she'd found the scarf. Stood in the doorway looking at his desk, his chair, his private space where he conducted the business of his life. Both his legitimate business and his affair. How many times had Sienna been here? Had she sat in that chair? Had Larry kissed her in this room, in the home he shared with his wife? Stefani walked to his desk, opened drawers she'd never invaded before. Found nothing at first, just papers, pens, the ordinary detritus of daily life. Then, in the back of the bottom drawer, she found a small box. Inside was a silver bracelet. Delicate, feminine, clearly expensive. Not something he'd given Stephanie. She checked the receipt tucked in the bottom of the box, purchased 3 weeks ago. Probably meant for Sienna's birthday or some other milestone in their relationship. She put the bracelet back exactly as she'd found it. More evidence, more proof of his betrayal. She found herself in front of the mirror, studying her reflection. She was still beautiful, still strong. Still the woman Larry had fallen in love with. But she was also changed, marked by betrayal, hardened by necessity, transformed into something that could do what needed to be done. The anniversary party was her idea. She'd approached Larry with it weeks ago before she'd found the scarf, back when she'd still believed their marriage was everything it seemed. 25 years, she'd said. We should celebrate. Larry had loved the idea. A big party. Everyone we know. Show them what real love looks like. Exactly. She'd started planning immediately. Sent out invitations. Booked the venue. Arranged catering. All with Larry's enthusiastic support. He'd even insisted on paying for everything, saying it was his gift to her, to them, to the marriage he cherished. The irony wasn't lost on her. Larry was funding his own destruction. The guest list read like a who's who of their life. Gabriel Stone and the other board members, clients and colleagues, family from both sides, friends they'd made together, Peter and Avery, everyone who'd watched them build this supposedly perfect marriage, and Sienna Hayes, because Larry had suggested innocently that they should invite some of the firm's key people. Network a little, you know, mix business with pleasure. Stefani had smiled and added Sienna to the list. Her husband's mistress would be there to watch him fall. She met with the event coordinator, a sharp woman named Ivy Martinez, who'd handled prestigious events for years. I want everything perfect, Stephanie said, but I also need some specific arrangements. Of course. What did you have in mind? Screen, large, professional setup. I'm planning a video presentation, photos from our marriage, that sort of thing. Something emotional. Ivy smiled. That's beautiful. Very romantic. I hope so. And I'll need the technical setup to be airtight. No glitches, no delays. When I'm ready to start the presentation, it needs to work perfectly. I'll make sure of it personally. Stefani also arranged for photographers, professional ones, but also made sure certain journalists she knew would be there. The story would get out. She would make sure of it. But she wanted control over how it broke, how it spread. Camilla came over one afternoon, bringing wine and the fierce loyalty of a friendship that had survived decades. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, sitting across from Stephanie in the garden. "Once you do this, there's no going back." "I don't want to go back. People are going to judge you. They're going to say you should have handled it privately, that you're being cruel." "Let them." Stephanie took a sip of wine. "I've spent my entire life worrying about what people think, about being the perfect wife, about not making waves. Look where it got me. It got you a son you love, a life that had real happiness in it. It did. And then my husband decided that wasn't enough. So now I'm deciding that silence isn't enough. That dignity doesn't mean letting people walk over you. That sometimes the cruelest thing you can do to someone who's hurt you is show everyone exactly who they really are." Camilla raised her glass. "To queens who don't apologize, to queens who take their crowns back." They drank to that. The days ticked down. 2 weeks, 10 days, 1 week. Stefani moved through each day with purpose, checking and double-checking every detail. Peter delivered the complete timeline. Dates, locations, proof that couldn't be disputed. She stored it all carefully, made multiple backups, prepared the presentation that would play at the party. And through it all, she continued to be the perfect wife. She laughed at Larry's jokes, went to dinners and events on his arm, made love to him when he reached for her in the night, because that was part of the performance too. She needed him comfortable, needed him unsuspecting. 3 days before the party, Larry brought home a gift. "For you," he said, handing her a small velvet box. "For our anniversary." Inside was a diamond necklace. Stunning, expensive, exactly her taste. "Larry, it's beautiful. 25 years with the most incredible woman I've ever known. You deserve more than a necklace. You deserve everything." She kissed him, let him clasp it around her neck, looked at herself in the mirror with diamonds at her throat. "I'll wear it to the party," she promised. "You'll be the most beautiful woman there. I hope I make you proud. You always do." That night, lying in bed beside him, listening to him sleep, Stefani touched the diamonds at her throat and smiled in the darkness. He'd given her the perfect finishing touch for her. Amma, the queen, would wear his gift when she took his crown, and the city would remember this moment for the rest of their lives. Chapter 7. The Invitation. The invitation had gone out weeks ago on cream-colored cardstock with gold lettering. Elegant, timeless, exactly what people expected from Larry and Stefani Bauer. "You are cordially invited to celebrate 25 years of love, commitment, and partnership. Join us as we honor a marriage that has inspired us all." People had responded immediately. Of course they'd come. Everyone wanted to see the couple who'd beaten the odds, who'd shown that real love still existed. The event had taken on a life of its own. Whispers through their social circles. Excitement building, people planning their outfits and preparing toasts. It was going to be the event of the season, and Stephanie was going to make sure it was remembered forever. Stephanie stood in her closet 3 days before the party, staring at the dress she'd chosen. Red, deep, powerful red that would stand out in any crowd. It was fitted, elegant, the kind of dress that commanded attention without begging for it. She'd bought it specifically for this night, for the moment when everything would change. The dress had cost more than she'd normally spend, but she'd paid for it with her own money, from her own account. Everything about this night would be hers, her choice, her power, her moment. She tried it on again, studying herself from every angle. The color made her skin glow, made her look fierce and untouchable. This was the armor she'd wear into battle. Larry came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. "You're going to be stunning in that." "You think so?" "I know so. Although you could wear anything and outshine everyone there." She leaned back against him, let him hold her. "Are you nervous? About the party?" "Nervous? No, why would I be nervous?" "But, I don't know. Big event. Lots of eyes on us. Pressure to live up to everyone's expectations." Larry laughed, completely oblivious. "We've been living up to expectations for 25 years. This is just a celebration of what we've already done." He kissed her neck. "Besides, when I look at you, I'm reminded why I'm the luckiest man alive. Nothing to be nervous about when you're standing beside me." The words should have warmed her. Once they would have. But now they felt like coins on a dead man's eyes, payment for passage to somewhere he didn't realize he was going. "I love you," she said, because the performance required it. "I love you too. Always have, always will." She wondered if he believed his own lies, wondered if he thought about Sienna while holding his wife, wondered if he felt any guilt at all, or if he'd compartmentalized so completely that he could genuinely believe both relationships were real. The morning of the party arrived with brilliant sunshine, like the universe was mocking her with its cheerfulness. Stefani woke early, leaving Larry still sleeping, and went through her final preparations. She called Peter. "You have everything?" "Everything. Mom, are you sure?" "I'm sure." "Okay, I'll be there early to help with the technical setup. Avery's coming too." "We're with you." "Thank you, baby. I know this isn't easy for you. He made it not easy. I'm just finishing what he started." She met with Ivy at the venue mid-morning. The space was transformed, flowers everywhere, white roses and orchids creating an atmosphere of elegant romance. Tables arranged perfectly, each one set with crystal and fine china. Lighting that would make everything look like a fairy tale. The screen was positioned exactly where she'd requested, large enough that everyone would see clearly, impossible to miss. "The technical crew will be here this afternoon," Ivy confirmed. "Everything's on schedule. The presentation is loaded and tested. Audio is perfect. When you're ready to start, just give me the signal and we'll bring the lights down." "Perfect. And the photographers?" "Confirmed. They'll be discreet until you signal otherwise. After that, they'll document everything." Stefani nodded, walked through the space, imagining how it would unfold. Guests arriving, impressed by the elegance, touched by the romance of it all. Cocktails and conversation, everyone relaxed and happy. Dinner perfectly executed. Toasts to the happy couple, celebrating their legendary love. And then her moment. The moment that would end one life and begin another. She stood at the podium where she'd make her speech, looked out at the empty room, and practiced her opening lines one more time. Her voice needed to be steady. Her delivery needed to be perfect. This wasn't just about exposing Larry. It was about reclaiming her narrative, her dignity, her power. Back home, she found Larry in the shower, singing off-key like he always did. Some old love song they'd danced to at their wedding. She sat on their bed listening to him and felt the weight of all the years between them. The good ones and the betrayed ones. The real moments and the lies. When he came out, towel around his waist, still smiling, she made herself smile back. "Ready for tonight?" she asked. "Born ready." "You almost. Just need to finalize my speech." "Your speech?" Larry looked surprised. "I thought I was doing the toast." "You are, but I wanted to say something too. About us, about our journey, about what love really means." She stood, walked to him, placed a hand on his chest where she could feel his heartbeat. "You don't mind, do you?" "Of course not. I love hearing you talk about us." "Good, because I have a lot to say." Larry kissed her forehead. "I can't wait to hear it. I'm sure it'll be beautiful. Everything you do is beautiful." She wanted to laugh at the irony. He had no idea what was coming. No idea that the woman standing in front of him, smiling and soft, was about to destroy him in front of everyone they knew. She spent the afternoon alone, going over everything one final time. The presentation was loaded, backed up, ready to go. Peter had tested it 3 times. The photographs were damning. The timeline was clear. Every piece of evidence arranged in a story that no one could misinterpret. Larry Boer had betrayed his wife, repeatedly, deliberately, for months. And tonight, everyone would know. She thought about calling it off, just for a moment, standing in her empty house with her red dress hanging in the closet and her future balanced on a knife's edge. She could still back out, could pack away the evidence, cancel the presentation, go to the party and play the devoted wife one more time. She could confront Larry privately later, get a quiet divorce, disappear with dignity and let him keep his reputation. That's what people would expect her to do. What they'd probably prefer she do, neat, clean, private, protecting everyone's comfort except her own. But then she remembered the scarf, the blonde hair, the emails where Larry told another woman he loved her while his wife waited at home, the hotel footage showing him with Sienna while Stephanie had been sick and alone, the bracelet hidden in his desk meant for someone else. The decision to destroy him publicly wasn't revenge. It was justice. Evening came. Stephanie began getting ready with the same care she'd taken for every important moment in her life. She bathed in water with jasmine oil, the same scent Larry had bought her when they were young and poor. She dried her hair until it fell in perfect waves, applied makeup with an artist's precision, highlighting her best features, making sure she'd never looked more beautiful. This was her moment. She would own it completely. The red dress slid over her skin like armor. She zipped it up, turned to see herself in the full-length mirror. The woman looking back was powerful, unbreakable, ready. She fastened the diamond necklace Larry had given her, put on earrings, heels that added inches to her height and made her feel like a warrior queen. Larry came into the bedroom and stopped, staring. "Wow, Stephanie, I don't have words. Good words, I hope. The best words. You're going to be the only person anyone looks at tonight. That's the plan." He crossed to her, kissed her softly. "I'm so lucky." "Yes," she said quietly. "You were." He didn't catch the past tense. The car ride to the venue was quiet. Larry held her hand, occasionally squeezing it, lost in his own thoughts. Probably planning his toast. Probably imagining standing in front of their friends and family, playing the devoted husband one more time. Probably thinking about how he'd text Sienna later, tell her about the party, maybe even complain about how exhausting it was to maintain appearances. Stephanie looked out the window at the city passing by. This city that had watched them build their marriage. This city that would now watch her tear it down. When they arrived, the venue was already filling with guests. People turned as they entered, faces lighting up, applause breaking out. The golden couple had arrived. Stephanie smiled, waved, accepted hugs and congratulations. She saw Gabriel Stone watching her with knowing eyes. He understood something was coming. Saw Camilla standing near the back, support written all over her face. Saw Peter and Avery talking quietly in a corner, both of them tense but ready. And there, near the bar, was Sienna Hayes in a pale blue dress, looking uncomfortable but determined. She'd come. Of course she had. Probably couldn't resist seeing Larry in his element. Probably thought she'd get to watch him play husband while knowing he was really hers. Stephanie caught her eye across the room, held her gaze. Let Sienna see something in her expression that made the younger woman look away first. Tonight, both of them would learn who Larry Boer really belonged to. Neither of them. Not anymore. Dinner was served. Speeches began. People laughed and cried and toasted the marriage that had inspired them all. Larry glowed under the attention, holding Stephanie's hand, kissing her cheek, playing his role flawlessly. When it was his turn to speak, he stood with his champagne glass raised. 25 years ago, I met a woman who changed my entire life. Stephanie Connell walked into a room, and suddenly I understood what people meant when they talked about love at first sight. She was beautiful, smart, fierce, everything I didn't know I needed. He looked down at her, eyes warm. We've had our challenges. The world didn't always understand us, but we understood each other. And that was enough. More than enough. Baby, you've given me everything. Our son, our life. A love that most people only dream about. I don't deserve you. I never have. But I promise to spend the rest of our lives trying to be worthy of you. The room erupted in applause. People were crying. Larry leaned down to kiss her, and Stephanie let him one last time. When he sat down, she stood. The room quieted, surprised but attentive. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began, her voice steady. "Larry's right. We've had an incredible journey. 25 years of building a life, raising our son, creating something that looked perfect from the outside." She paused. And for a long time it was perfect. It was real. It was everything a marriage should be. She could feel Larry starting to relax beside her, thinking this was just going to be more of the same. But something changed along the way. Somewhere in our story, the truth and the performance started to separate. And tonight, I want to show you all what I've learned about the difference between love and lies. She signaled to Peter. The lights dimmed. The screen behind her came to life, and Larry's perfect world began to burn. Chapter 8. The Gathering Storm. The first image appeared on the screen, a photograph of Larry and Stephanie on their wedding day. Young and radiant, and so obviously in love it made people sigh. Murmurs of appreciation rippled through the crowd. This seemed sweet, nostalgic, exactly what they'd expected. "This is where it started," Stephanie said, her voice carrying through the room. Two people who believed in forever, who looked at each other and decided that every obstacle was worth facing as long as they faced it together. More photos cycled through. Peter as a baby in their arms, family vacations, anniversaries, moments captured throughout the years showing a marriage that looked unshakable. Larry was smiling beside her, probably thinking this was building to some romantic declaration, some reaffirmation of their vows. He had no idea what was coming. "We built a life," Stephanie continued. "Not just a marriage, but a partnership. We worked together, dreamed together, created something that people looked at and believed in." She paused. "And then, somewhere along the way, my husband decided that wasn't enough. The images changed. Hotel receipts appeared on the screen. Credit card statements highlighting charges at restaurants Stephanie had never been to. Calendar entries marked meeting with timestamps that told their own story. The room went silent. People shifted uncomfortably. Larry sat frozen in his seat, the color draining from his face. "Last month I walked into my husband's office to bring him lunch. Something I've done for years because it was our tradition. And I found this." The image of the cream scarf appeared, the blonde hair visible even from the back of the room. Gasps, whispers starting. Stephanie could feel the energy shifting, people realizing this wasn't the celebration they'd thought they were attending. "One strand of hair," Stephanie said quietly. "That's all it took to unravel 25 years of trust. One strand of hair that didn't belong to me." "Stephanie," Larry stood, reaching for her, his voice cracking. "Please, let's not." "Sit down, Larry." The command in her voice was absolute. Larry sat. The presentation continued. Email exchanges between Larry and Sienna appeared on screen, not explicit. Stephanie had some mercy, but clear enough. "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was beautiful. I can't stop thinking about you." Stephanie heard someone crying. Saw people turning to look at Larry with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. Saw Sienna Hayes standing near the back, pale as death, trying to edge toward the exit. "Don't leave, Sienna," Stephanie called out. "You're part of this story too. Come on up. Let everyone see you." Sienna froze, shook her head, looked desperately at Larry like he could save her. But Larry wasn't saving anyone. Larry was drowning. "Sienna Hayes," Stephanie announced to the room. "Consultant, mistress, the woman my husband has been seeing for the past year while telling me he loved me, while kissing me goodnight, while planning this anniversary party where he stood up and told all of you how much he treasured our marriage." The video footage played next. Hotel security cameras showing Larry and Sienna meeting. Timestamps proving the frequency, the pattern impossible to deny. Someone in the crowd yelled at Larry. Stefani couldn't hear what they said over the rising chaos, but the disgust was clear. "Mom!" Peter was suddenly beside her, his hand on her arm, not stopping her, just being there, support and solidarity. Stefani took a breath. This was the moment, the turn. The part where she showed everyone that she wasn't just revealing Larry's betrayal, she was taking back her power. For weeks after I discovered the truth, I had choices to make. I could confront my husband privately, could try to save our marriage through counseling and communication, could do what society tells women to do, be quiet, be dignified, protect the man's reputation. She walked to the front of the stage, making sure everyone could see her clearly. But why should I protect him? Why should I be the one who carries the shame of his choices? Why should I let him control the narrative and play the victim? Gabriel Stone stood from his table. "Stefani, if you need anything, I need everyone to understand what's really happening here. Larry didn't just betray me as a wife. He betrayed me as a partner, as someone who helped build everything he claims as his own." New images appeared on the screen. Legal documents, corporate filings, proof of Stefani's contributions to the business that bore Larry's name. I was never just the supportive wife standing in the background. I was essential to our success. My relationships, my networking, my work, and while I stepped back to raise our son and support my husband's dreams, I never stopped being a part of what we built. She turned to look directly at Larry. He looked small now, broken, like a man watching his entire life collapse, and unable to stop it, so I made different choices. I took the time to understand the full scope of his betrayal, to document everything, and to ensure that when I walked away from this marriage, I wouldn't walk away empty-handed. Jasper Cole stood, holding a folder. He walked to the front and handed it to Stefani. "These are legal documents showing the transfer of assets, the reformation of our business structure. Larry Borger no longer controls the company we built together. The board voted, with full knowledge of his conduct, to remove him as CEO. The room erupted, people talking over each other. Larry stood again, this time with rage written across his face. "You can't do this! You can't just destroy everything we... Stefani's voice cut through the chaos. "There is no we anymore, Larry. You destroyed that the first time you climbed into bed with someone who wasn't your wife. I'm just making sure you understand the consequences." She held up the papers. "I now own 70% of Borger Industries. The board has voted to restructure under new leadership. Your clients have been notified. Your access has been revoked." She paused. "You gave Sienna your nights. I took your empire." Larry's face cycled through emotions, shock, rage, disbelief. He looked around the room, at faces that had once admired him, that now looked at him with contempt. "This is insane. Stefani, please, we can talk about this. We're done talking. We've been done since the moment you decided I wasn't enough." She turned back to the crowd. "I want to thank all of you for coming tonight. I know this isn't the celebration you expected, but I needed witnesses. I needed you all to see the truth. To understand that when someone betrays you, when someone takes your love and your trust and your years of devotion and throws them away, you don't have to suffer in silence." She looked at the women in the crowd specifically. "You don't have to protect men who hurt you. You don't have to make their lies easier to tell. You don't have to sacrifice your dignity for their comfort." Camilla started clapping. Slowly, others joined. Not everyone. Some people were too shocked, too uncomfortable. But enough. Enough women who understood. Enough people who'd been hurt and silenced and made to feel like their pain didn't matter. Stefani stood in her red dress with diamonds at her throat and the ruins of her marriage around her feet, and she felt powerful. The queen had just taken back her crown, and the kingdom would never forget it. Chapter 9. The Revelation. The aftermath of Stefani's revelation hit like a tidal wave. Security had to be called when several guests, Larry's supposed friends, began shouting at him. Others fled the venue entirely, unwilling to be associated with the scandal that was already spreading through text messages and social media posts. Stefani stood at the center of it all, calm and composed, while chaos swirled around her. Peter and Avery flanked her on one side, Camilla on the other. Her people, her army, the ones who'd stood by her when her world had cracked open. Larry tried one more time to approach her, desperation making him reckless. "Stephanie, please. Not like this. We can fix this. You can leave," she said coldly. "There's nothing left for you here. That's my son. Your son is standing beside me, making his own choice about where his loyalty belongs." She looked at Larry with eyes that held no warmth, no love, nothing but the cold assessment of a woman who'd already moved past him. "You had everything, Larry, everything, and you threw it away because you were bored, because you wanted to feel young again, because some blonde woman made you feel special." Sienna Hayes had already fled. Someone had seen her leaving in tears, her pale blue dress disappearing into the night like she'd never been there at all. The woman who'd thought she was special enough to steal another woman's husband had learned a hard truth. Men who cheat with you will absolutely let you burn alone. "I love you," Larry said. And it might have been the first true thing he'd said all night. "I still love you. I made a mistake, but nothing." Stephanie's voice was steel. "Love isn't just a feeling, Larry, it's a choice. It's choosing the same person every single day, even when it's hard, even when it's boring, even when someone prettier or younger or easier comes along. You didn't choose me, so now I'm choosing myself." Gabriel Stone approached as Larry was being escorted out by security. The older man's expression was grave, but not unkind. "Stefani, that took tremendous courage, or tremendous anger. Sometimes they're the same thing." He handed her a business card. "The board wants to meet with you next week. We need to discuss the transition plan, formalize your position as CEO, and handle the remaining logistics. But I want you to know you have our full support." "Thank you, Gabriel. And Stephanie, you did the right thing. We should have seen this coming. Should have known something was wrong when he started making careless decisions, when his focus wasn't where it should be. You saved the company by doing this." After Gabriel left, the venue slowly emptied. Some people approached Stefani with support, with apologies for not seeing what was happening, with admiration for her strength. Others left without speaking, uncomfortable with the messiness of it all, preferring their scandals to stay private and neat. Ivy Martinez approached with her usual efficiency. "We'll handle the cleanup." And Mrs. Bauer, "For what it's worth, I've worked hundreds of events, and I've never seen anyone handle themselves with more grace under pressure. Whatever happens next, you'll be fine." When the last guest had departed, when the lights had come back up revealing the beautiful ruin of what was supposed to be a celebration, Stefani finally allowed herself to feel the weight of what she'd done. Peter wrapped his arms around her. "Mom, you were incredible. I just destroyed my marriage in front of everyone we know." "You destroyed a lie." "The marriage was already dead. Dad killed it." Avery hugged her next. "You're the strongest woman I've ever met." "I don't feel strong. I feel—" She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Angry, sad, powerful, broken, victorious, destroyed. She felt everything all at once. Camilla took her hand. "Come on, let's get you out of here." "You can stay at my place tonight." "I should go home." "That's not your home anymore. Not tonight. Tonight you need to be somewhere safe. Somewhere you can fall apart if you need to." And Stefani did fall apart. In the car, in Camilla's guest room, curled up in borrowed clothes, the red dress discarded like shed armor, the diamonds returned to their box. She cried for the marriage she'd lost, even though she'd been the one to end it. Cried for the man Larry used to be, before he'd chosen to become someone who betrayed her. Cried for the years she'd wasted believing in. Forever. But she didn't cry for long, because beneath the grief was something harder, stronger, something that had been forged in the fire of betrayal and had come out unbreakable. By morning, the story had spread everywhere. News outlets had picked it up. Socialite exposes husband's affair at anniversary party. Social media was on fire with opinions. Some people called her vindictive. Others called her a hero. The video clips that guests had recorded were going viral. Stephanie's words being quoted and shared and turned into memes about female empowerment. Peter showed up with coffee and breakfast. "Mom, you need to see this." He pulled up his phone, showed her the headlines, the trending hashtags. Stephanie Connell was #1 worldwide. One strand of hair was right behind it. "I've destroyed him," she said quietly. "He destroyed himself. You just made sure everyone knew about it." The legal fallout came fast. Divorce papers were filed that afternoon. Stephanie had had them prepared for weeks, just waiting for the right moment. Larry tried to fight, tried to negotiate, but the evidence was overwhelming. The affair, the misuse of company resources, the breach of fiduciary duty. By the end of the week, Stephanie had preliminary agreements for everything she'd demanded. The business, the house, security for her future. Larry would walk away with what he'd contributed and nothing more. Sienna Hayes resigned from her position and left town. Nobody heard from her again. Just another casualty in the war Larry had started. 2 weeks after the party, Stephanie stood in the office that was now officially hers. CEO of Connell Industries. She'd renamed it, removing his name entirely. The space was hers to shape, hers to build, hers to turn into whatever she wanted it to be. Gabriel knocked on the open door. "The transition is going smoother than expected. Clients are actually relieved. They're saying they should have been working with you all along. That's generous of them. It's honest." He sat down across from her. "Stephanie, I know you're still processing everything that's happened, but I want you to know this company is in good hands. Your hands. We made the right choice. I hope so." After he left, she sat alone in her office, looking out over the city. The same city that had watched her and Larry build their supposedly perfect love. The same city that had now watched her tear it down. She picked up her phone, opened her photos, looked at the picture she'd taken weeks ago, the cream scarf with its single blonde hair, the thing that had started everything. One strand of hair had destroyed a marriage, had exposed a liar, had given her back her power. She deleted the photo. She didn't need it anymore. The evidence had served its purpose. The war was won. Now came the harder part, learning how to live in the peace she'd fought for. Chapter 10. The Queen's Crown. 3 months later, the dust had finally settled. Not disappeared, Stephanie suspected. It would be years before the story of her anniversary party revelation stopped being whispered about in certain circles, but settled enough that she could breathe without feeling like she was constantly performing. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning. Stephanie signed the papers in Jasper Cole's office with a hand that didn't shake, accepted his congratulations, and walked out into sunshine that felt different somehow, lighter, like the weight she'd been carrying had finally lifted. Larry had tried to reconcile. Of course he had. He'd sent flowers, letters, shown up at her office until security learned to turn him away. He'd begged Peter to intervene, to convince his mother to give him another chance. Peter had told him in words that made Stephanie proud that he'd lost the right to ask for chances. Now Stephanie stood in the office she'd built from the ashes of her marriage, looking at the plaque on her door. Stephanie Connell, CEO. Her name, her title, her empire. "You have a visitor," Ivy said over the intercom. Ivy Martinez had left event planning to become Stephanie's executive assistant. "She says it's personal." Stephanie almost laughed. Everything was personal now. Her business had become personal. Her success had become personal. The woman she was becoming had been born from the most personal betrayal imaginable. "Send her in." The woman who entered was young, mid-20s, with dark hair and anxious eyes. "Mrs. Boher? Or, I'm sorry, is it Miss Connell now?" "Stephanie is fine." "And you are?" "My name is Naomi. She stopped, gathered courage. "I saw your video. The anniversary party. It went viral, and I watched it, and I needed to meet you. Sit down, Naomi. The young woman sat, twisting her hands in her lap. My husband is cheating on me. I found messages, proof, just like you did. And I didn't know what to do. Everyone keeps telling me to be quiet about it, to protect his reputation, to think about our kids. But then I saw you, and I thought, why should I protect him? Stefani felt something crack open in her chest. This was why she'd done it publicly. Not for revenge, though that had been part of it, but for this. For the women who needed to see someone refused to be silent. How long have you known? She asked gently. 2 months. I've been dying inside for 2 months while he comes home and kisses me and acts like everything's normal. I know that pain. How did you do it? How did you find the strength to burn everything down like that? Stefani was quiet for a moment. I realized that I'd spent my entire marriage being strong for everyone else. Strong for my husband when he needed support. Strong for my son so he'd feel secure. Strong for all the people who looked at our marriage and needed to believe love was real. And then I realized who was being strong for me. Naomi nodded, tears spilling over. So I decided to be strong for myself. Not in the way people expected. Quietly, privately, with dignity that protected my husband's feelings. But in the way I needed, loudly, publicly, with the kind of strength that said, I deserve better than this, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. I want to do that, but I'm scared. You should be. It's terrifying. But Naomi, let me ask you something. What's scarier, standing up for yourself, or spending the next 20 years wondering why you weren't worth fighting for? The young woman left an hour later with Jasper's card, with Stephanie's personal number, with the beginning of a plan to take back her own life. She wasn't the first woman who'd sought Stephanie out, and she wouldn't be the last. Stephanie had become something she'd never intended, a symbol. Women reached out to her constantly. Some wanted advice. Some just wanted to tell their stories to someone who'd understand. Some wanted permission to stop being silent. She gave it freely. That evening, Stefani met Peter and Avery for dinner. Her son looked lighter these days, like removing his father's betrayal from his life had freed him too. I got a call from Dad today, Peter said, picking at his food. He wanted to know if I'd have dinner with him. Stefani kept her expression neutral. What did you say? I said no, not yet. Maybe not ever. He looked up at his mother. Is that wrong? He's still my father. He is. And whatever relationship you choose to have with him is your decision. I won't influence it either way. He destroyed you. He destroyed our marriage. But I'm not destroyed, Peter. Look at me. Really look. Her son did. Saw his mother in a power suit that fit her perfectly, wearing confidence like jewelry. Saw her smile more easily than she had in years. Saw strength that had always been there but was no longer hidden behind the role of devoted wife. You're happy, he said, sounding surprised. I'm getting there. Some days are harder than others. But yes, I think I'm happy. Or at least I'm becoming the kind of woman who can be. Avery squeezed Peter's hand. Your mom is incredible. You know that, right? I know. After dinner, Stefani drove through the city alone. Past the venue where she detonated her marriage. Past the home she'd shared with Larry, now sold, the money split, neither of them able to live in a place that held so many ghosts. Past all the landmarks of her old life. She ended up at the cemetery where her grandmother was buried. The woman who'd raised her to be proud, to be strong, to never let anyone make her feel less than she was. Stefani sat on the bench beside the headstone as the sun set. I did it, Grandma, just like you taught me. I didn't let him make me small, didn't let him win. The wind rustled through the trees, and Stefani imagined it was her grandmother's approval. It hurt, though, more than I thought it would, even though I was the one who ended it. Even though I knew it had to happen, it still hurt. Does that make me weak? No answer. Just the wind and the fading light and the peace that came from talking to someone who'd always understood her. I think you'd be proud anyway. I think you'd tell me that strength isn't about not feeling pain. It's about feeling it and choosing to move forward anyway. She sat until the stars came out. Then she drove to her new home, a penthouse apartment downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and space that was entirely hers. No memories of Larry, no ghosts, just possibility. The next morning, Stefani had a board meeting. She presented her vision for Connell Industries' future, expansion plans, new market strategies, innovations that would take them beyond what they'd been. The board listened with respect, asked intelligent questions, and approved her proposals unanimously. After the meeting, Gabriel pulled her aside. "Have you heard from Larry at all?" "His lawyers contact mine. But no, we don't speak directly." "Good, because I ran into him last week. He looks diminished, lost, kept asking if there was any way to get his position back." "What did you tell him?" "That bridges once burned rarely get rebuilt, and that the company is better off without him." Gabriel paused. "Was that too harsh?" "No, it was honest. The truth was, Stephanie didn't think about Larry much anymore. Some days she'd see something that reminded her of him. A song they'd danced to, a restaurant they'd loved, their son's mannerisms that echoed his father. But the sharp pain had faded to a dull ache, and even that was becoming less frequent. She was building something new, a life that wasn't defined by his choices, a future that belonged to her alone. One afternoon, Camilla came by the office with champagne and an impish smile. "We're celebrating." "Celebrating what?" "You 3 months ago, you stood in front of everyone we know and took your power back. Today, you're the CEO of a thriving company. You're financially secure, you're independent, and you're happy. That deserves champagne." They toasted in Stephanie's office, laughing like they used to before everything got complicated. Before marriage and betrayal and revenge. Just two friends, celebrating survival. "Do you ever regret it?" Camilla asked. "How you did it. The public nature of it all." Stefani considered the question carefully. "Sometimes I wish I could have spared Peter the spectacle. That's the only part I'd change. But the rest? No, I needed to do it that way, for me, to prove to myself that I wasn't going to hide or apologize or make his betrayal easier for everyone to ignore. The city hasn't stopped talking about it. Let them talk. I'm not ashamed." And she wasn't. The story had spread beyond their city, beyond their social circles. Stefani Connell had become a name people recognized. Women approached her at restaurants, in stores, on the street. Some thanked her. Some told their own stories. Some just wanted to shake her hand. She'd become an accidental advocate for something she'd never planned to represent, the refusal to suffer silently. As the months passed, Stefani found herself healing in unexpected ways. She started painting again, something she'd abandoned years ago. She traveled, took Peter and Avery to places she'd always wanted to see. She made new friends who knew her as Stephanie Connell, CEO, not as Larry Bauer's wife. She learned what it meant to be whole on her own, to not need someone else to complete her, to find joy in small moments, morning coffee, good books, conversations that mattered, work that challenged her. One evening, nearly 6 months after the anniversary party, Stefani stood in front of a mirror getting ready for a charity gala. She wore gold tonight, a color that made her skin glow, her confidence radiate. She looked at her reflection and realized something profound. She was beautiful, not because someone loved her, not because she was part of a legendary couple, not because she performed perfection for an audience. She was beautiful because she'd survived, because she'd refused to let betrayal destroy her, because she'd chosen herself when everyone else expected her to choose silence. The gala was packed with familiar faces, some who'd been at the anniversary party, some who'd only heard the stories. Stefani walked in alone, head high, and felt the weight of their stares. Some admiring, some judging. She didn't care about either. Gabriel found her by the bar. "You look radiant." "I feel good. Stephanie, I want you to meet someone." "This is Ezra Morrison. He runs Morrison Foundation, does incredible work in education and community development." "Ezra, this is Stephanie Connell." Ezra was tall, distinguished, with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Ms. Connell, I've heard so much about you." I can only imagine which stories you've heard, the ones about your strength, your business acumen, your refusal to let anyone define you." He extended his hand. "I'd love to talk with you about a potential partnership between our organizations." They talked for hours. About business, about community impact, about the responsibility that came with success. Ezra was intelligent, passionate, easy to talk to. And when the evening ended, he asked for her number. Not romantically, he made that clear, but professionally. "I think we could do incredible things together," he said. "If you're interested." "I'm interested." Walking to her car later, Stefani realized she was smiling. Not because of Ezra specifically, though he'd been pleasant company, but because she'd spent an entire evening being seen as herself, not as a victim, not as a vengeful ex-wife, just as Stefani, a woman with ideas and ambition and something valuable to offer the world. Back in her apartment, she poured herself wine and stood at the windows overlooking the city. All those lights representing lives being lived, stories unfolding, people choosing every day who they wanted to be. She thought about Larry sometimes, in a detached way, wondered if he'd learned anything from losing everything, wondered if Sienna Hayes ever thought about the role she'd played, wondered if the people who'd watched her marriage implode had learned something about the difference between performance and truth. But mostly, she thought about herself. About the woman she'd been, devoted, trusting, willing to sacrifice her own identity for love. And the woman she'd become, powerful, independent, unwilling to accept less than she deserved. Both women were real. Both had value, but only one of them was free. Her phone buzzed. A text from Peter. "Love you, Mom. Proud of you always." She smiled, typed back, "Love you too, baby. Thank you for standing with me." Another text, this one from Naomi, the young woman who'd visited her office. "Filed for divorce today. Scared but strong. Thank you for showing me how." Stefani felt tears prick her eyes. This was the legacy she wanted. Not the scandal, not the viral video, but the ripple effect of choosing herself, of showing other women that they could too. She walked to her bedroom, changed into comfortable clothes, washed her face. In the mirror, without makeup, without armor, she saw herself clearly. A black woman who'd been told she should be grateful for love, who'd proven she deserved more than crumbs. A queen who'd worn her crown through a lifetime of challenges, who'd had it knocked askew by betrayal, and who'd straightened it herself rather than waiting for someone else to do it for her. One strand of hair had started this journey, had unraveled everything she thought she knew, had forced her to choose between comfortable lies and painful truth. She'd chosen truth, and truth had set her free. Stefani Connell fell asleep that night in her own bed, in her own home, with her own future stretching out before her like an unwritten story. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, she couldn't wait to see what came next, because the queen had taken back her crown. And kingdoms built by queens never fell, they only grew stronger. The end.